Now, poor Kelly, who does all this videotaping, she said there won't be any glare, and I said only from me. So if there is glare, it's not the sun, it's me, okay? Remember that. Now, self-deprecation is something that everybody should indulge in. But now what are we going to talk about today? Look, I really haven't made up my mind, but I'm a little bit concerned. I'm a concerned, committed citizen today. We're in this beautiful garden, iron bars behind us, Parliament House, the Victorian Parliament House, the birds, the tram, the fountain. Glorious day. A swag of some homeless person who'll come later on tonight and sleep over here somewhere. There's people in the park enjoying themselves, sucking on their savloys and pies. But I'm concerned. I want to look at the panic that's enveloping the nation. Sounds big. Panic enveloping the nation as I speak. Now, we all know about COVID-19 or coronavirus, but we are seeing extraordinary things happen in this country. And I think what it does is it highlights the type of society we have become and how we have become atomised individuals. It highlights a lack of leadership from people in authority, and that's been very obvious when you see the federal government fumble from response to response as it tries to catch up with the changing nature of the coronavirus threat, COVID-19 threat. There's this general sense of panic, and I've seen this panic in people I would never have believed would panic. And if you walk into a supermarket, which I normally don't do, but I did for a bit of a laugh, I went into a Collingwood supermarket yesterday, and there's no toilet paper, there's no flour, rice was in short supply, and you think, are we in a war? Have the Indonesians invaded? Are we in a war zone? Now, if you remember that 2 million people will die this year from malaria, that 500,000 people have died in Syria in the last 9 years in that atrocious civil war, that as I speak, civilians are being bombed and strafed by United States-backed countries in Yemen, like Saudi Arabia in Yemen. And if you think that there will be at least possibly around 2,000 to 2,500 deaths from road traffic accidents in this country, and you realise that 95% of people who are going to capture the COVID-19 will recover quite quickly, and that it's mainly people like me, old people, and people with disabilities who are most at risk because of respiratory complications, you begin to place the threat in context. Now, originally, when the virus first made its appearance in January, late December, early January in Wuhan province in China, all the balls were up in the air. We didn't know whether the mortality rate was going to be 1%, 2%, 50%, 90%. We didn't know how contagious it was going to be. We didn't know whether it was going to cause major respiratory issues, but we do now have a lot of knowledge about the consequences of it, and the response, the panic, I think highlights to a significant degree the type of society we have become. We are now, after 40 years of deregulation and privatisation and globalisation, corporatisation, we have become a collection of atomised individuals. And what we are seeing is the individual response to threat that occurs when individuals believe there is no external support or any authority they can trust. So we see people hoarding for themselves and their families because they believe there's no central authority that will be able to address the issue. They have no trust in government, they have no trust in institutions, and what we've seen over the last 2 years is a wholesale destruction of people's faith in institutions which form the foundation stones of this country. The Royal Commission into the financial sector showed how corrupt and avarice the banking sector was in the financial sector. The Royal Commission into institutional child abuse showed the corruption to the core of major religious organisations who grow fat on taxpayers' money, supporting their universities and schools, charities, their forays into providing services for human beings. So in a situation like that, the individual regresses to a survivalist mode. It's up to me to ensure that me and my family and my friends get through this. So that means I'm going to hoard. It means I'm going to be mean to my neighbours. It means I'm going to see the people around me not as potential allies but as threats. And when you've got a Prime Minister as weak, and the key word is weak, as Mr Morrison, a man who's clearly out of his depth. We saw that during the bushfire emergency. We are seeing it now during the coronavirus situation we find ourselves in. This is a man who follows behind the pack. He's a man who has great difficulty addressing major issues. That's why we've called him Scotty from advertising. And even his advertising isn't very good. So when you've got a man who's in charge of the country, in charge of cabinet, who has no backbone, who has no ability to bring the nation together in the face of this crisis, what actually happens, as I said before, people atomise. And if you live in a society where competition is the essence of success, and we compete in primary school, preschool, high school, university, work, it's all about competition, not cooperation. You breed individuals who are basically have no affinity to their community, no affinity to their state, no affinity to the country, no support or affinity. And it's something we have seen grow and grow and grow in this country, where it's all about me. It's about me. It's about what I can acquire, what I can consume, who I can kick aside, how much I can amass, how much wealth I can amass. And when you've got an immigration system which encourages people with these type of attitudes to become migrants to this country, you compound the problem. So we have a major issue in this country. Although it's a country called Australia, and although we've pushed aside the First Nations people and refused to enter into a meaningful dialogue regarding compensation and treaty, we are now a society with no guidelines. There's no light on the hill. There's no future. It's all about me. And when a threat occurs, then it's about how can I protect what I've got and stuff everybody else. So to me, it's a major defect in the DNA of our country. It's a major defect in the way we think and the way we interact. Because whether we like it or not, we are part of a community. We have neighbours, we have relatives, we have friends, we have common interests, and that's what a community is, a group of people with common interests. And when those common interests have been skewed in such a way as to put the public aside and promote the private, we find this situation. And that's why, as the registered officer for public interest before corporate interests, it's so difficult to get members, because people don't even know what the concept of public means. The people, they have no concept, because for the last 40 years we have abandoned the concept of citizenship and the concept of us being part of the people of this nation. So what this virus has done is highlight the moral, ethical and sociological defects in our society. There are no individual solutions to the coronavirus, COVID-19. COVID-19 doesn't care whether you're white or black or yellow or brindle. It doesn't care whether you're gay, straight or bi. It doesn't care whether you're an immigrant or an asylum seeker or a refugee. It doesn't care who you are. It doesn't recognise geographical boundaries. It doesn't recognise state borders. It's invisible. It's a threat to everyone and a threat to no one at the same time. And the response we have seen causes me great concern for this nation, because we have taken a detour which has removed us from our community roots. It's removed us from the equation of being a country. Because we are, at the end of the day, we are what we are. We are a community on this continent who need to cooperate in order to survive. For far too long, governments and oppositions have used fear as a mechanism of generating support. Fear of the asylum seeker, fear of gays, fear of refugees, fear of Muslims, fear of Africans. And the list goes on, fear of Indigenous Australians. And the list goes on and on and on and on. To even the ridiculous fear of halal. Unbelievable. But it just goes on and on. So if you use fear to mobilise people, and if you use fear to get them to vote for you because you're concerned that their policies may actually assist other people and maybe not assist you, well then this is the type of society we create. Now I believe the Australian people are much greater than atomised individual. I believe, no I don't believe, I think, I know that as a community we can address any issue as long as we cooperate with each other, as long as we don't compete. I mean, this gentleman or lady who's going to be sleeping in this park tonight has left their swag there, and hopefully nobody will, no council officer will get rid of their swag over the next 24 hours. There's no reason for them to be homelessness. We are a rich society. We can resolve that issue if we work cooperatively. But working cooperatively is something that we have forgotten. Because at the end of the day, what pulls people through natural disasters is not the fact they're atomised individuals. They've got everything at their, they've got their store of food, they've got their store of clothes, they've got their guns, they've got their shelters. This attitude helps no one, not even those who are in a survivalist mode. Because in order for us to survive in a complex urban society, and we are the most urbanised society on earth, we need to be able to interact, understand each other's needs, and then work to satisfying those needs. We are Australians. We are part of a community. We are part of the world. We are part of a local community. We are not just isolated individuals, although we may feel that. And to a large degree, as I said last week, a lot of the angst we find in a first world nation like Australia, and the angst we are now suffering collectively as a nation regarding something like coronavirus, the threat of coronavirus, is an indication of what type of society we have become. And it's about time that governments stop talking about we're going to give so much money for this, but actually try to get us to come together as people, organise public meetings, organise community events, organise town hall meetings around this country to explain to people what this is all about. Not rely on social media or the mass media or the legacy media, but actually rely on imparting real information. Every time I listen to a news bulletin, every time I go on social media, it's basically garbage as far as COVID-19 is concerned. So what are we going to do? We're going to be atomised individuals for the rest of our lives? Or are we going to become part of a movement which puts public interest, the interest of the many, before corporate interest, the interest of the few? This channel is run by public interest before corporate interest. And we have been attempting the last 3 to 4 years to get 550 members on the federal electoral roll in order to register as a federal political party. Not because we want to be elected to power, but we want to change the direction of public debate and the interaction that should occur in a multiracial, multicultural society. Because if we don't do that, we will become hostile blocks who basically just talk at each other, not talk with each other, and not work together to solve these issues. And if governments can't do it, and it looks like governments cannot do it because nobody trusts government today, it's time that we as people did it. So I encourage you to go to the website PIBCI.net, download the application form, have a look at it. If you're interested, join us, become part of a growing political movement that puts the interests of the many, that's the public, before the interests of the few, that's the corporate sector, that small sector of society that owns the means of production, distribution, exchange and communication. Sometimes, in a period of crisis, We need to take action. And one simple policy which would resolve many of the issues that we canvass on these YouTube presentations, there's the concept of a universal basic income. Get a universal basic income as a natural birthright for every Australian, every permanent resident. You would find that we wouldn't have this huge kerfuffle regarding coronavirus because people's income is protected and they could self-isolate. We could tackle the virus problem. And a universal basic income is just one of the many policies which public interest before corporate interest has been involved in formulating. So if you're interested, go to the website PIBCI.net. If you're not interested, I encourage you to work collectively, because that is the only way we can address issues like climate change, increasing temperatures, the effect of increasing CO2 on the population, the effect of increasing number of viruses and bacteria spawning in the society, the effect of finite resources, the effect of people usurping power and using it for their own good, not the good of the people they rule. Listen next week to Public Interest Before Corporate Interest YouTube presentation. Who knows what we'll talk about, but seriously, go to the website PIBCI.net, have a look. We don't have all the answers, we don't even have any of the answers, but what we do, we have a process via which we can address all the issues that face us as communities and a nation by working collectively and for each other, not against each other.